Welcome back to How to Craft Fair. This is episode number 12 in the Craft Fair booth review series where I take a look at a real craft fair booth submitted by one of my subscribers, and I'm going to break it down into 10 different segments. Along the way, I'll point out areas of strength that they're doing well and should continue to do, and then also identify areas of improvement where they can level up their booth. During the review, think about your craft fair booth and how you can apply these tips so that you can improve along the way as well. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, and for today's episode, we are going to be reviewing Angela's booth, and their business name is Hey Manifesto, and they're based out of California. So, all right, first booth in California, fantastic. This one's going to be interesting today. This episode's going to be pretty interesting because this is the first booth review where we're doing mixed media art at the booth, okay? And more specifically, her crafts consist of post-apocalyptic dystopian oddities. Okay, so pretty interesting stuff, and I'm really a big fan of oddities. We actually just had pretty close to my house. We had a really big convention with oddities recently. Lots of fun pictures floating around social media that week when they were in town. So it's always a lot of fun, you know. So I really like these booths, but however, they are a challenge when it comes to like clarity, because with mixed media and specifically oddities, there's really no consistency with like textures and things like that. So we're going to dive into that today and start to address some of the challenges that vendors who have these types of items face. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the first thing that we're going to break down is displays. So here is the front of the booth, and today we're looking at a 10 by 10 outdoor booth. Okay, so a 10 by 10 space, and the way that the booth is set up is one long table in the front and then one long table on the side. And at this particular event, Angela was lucky enough to have a corner booth. Okay, so there was two areas of traffic, one area of traffic at the angle we're looking at in the front, and then also foot traffic on the side here. So first of all, good job of having displays covering all sides of the foot traffic. That's an absolute must when you have a corner booth like this. Is you want to have your displays facing outward towards all the foot traffic that you possibly can. So good job taking advantage of that. Now, when we start to dive into the displays a little bit more specifically here, there's a really wide variety. Okay, so let's cover kind of like from the top down. So in the top, she has this chain that's linked up to the inside of the canopy. You can kind of see a little bit better over here. So there's this chain hanging down, and it's kind of like old and rusty, and this in itself is kind of cool because she could have used really anything in this situation, like a clothesline or a rope or something like that, but she went with like the rusty chain, and it just is a really smart choice because it matches the vibe of the booth. Like, you kind of see some weathered items and items with character and stuff like that. Even in her display accessories, the theme is considered, so that's just a good thing to keep in mind, with you at your booth. Whatever you happen to make is, consider your theme all the way through. Don't let it just be about like the items or, your fabrics, like your tablecloths and stuff like that. Consider every aspect of your booth and start to really tie that theme in. All right, so the items that are hung up, she's got the S hooks going through the chain, so that's, very, very easy, simple application, good thinking, and it's doing a good job. So she's using that vertical space well, utilizing that space up top at the booth all the way around, so good job there. And then as we start to look at the tables and we go left to right, this piece is really cool. I'm not exactly sure what this board is or if it's like a piece of metal or something, but it's kind of cool, And then she's got the clothespins that are enabling the necklaces to hang. Okay, so again, good job, and there's pretty good contrast here. There's pretty decent contrast. It could be maybe like a little bit better because some of these items are kind of like this, I don't know what you call it, like kind of like a copper shade or a bronze kind of shade. So there's a couple items that don't really pop as well. Like this item actually looks really cool. Like it has like gears and stuff on it, but you can't really see it too well against the backing, But because because there's a variety of items and colors on against this backing, it's going to be pretty hard for it to be like a perfect match with like every item. You know what I mean? So there's going to be like a little sacrifice here and there on a couple of items when you do this. All right, moving over here, we have a couple of different things. So this is kind of cool. So there's pretty much like a cut of a log, you know, like just like a little piece of wood here. So we have the natural look, and then we have 6 or 7 trinket boxes on top of it. So really, really good contrast here against the light colored wood with the dark boxes. I really like this accent piece with the fur around the wood. So automatically you start kind of thinking of forest or outdoorsy theme. You just get that like natural outdoorsy gritty theme, you know, going. And then up top over it, we have the wooden crate providing height to get it up and over the trinket boxes. And then a really cool kind of like open-faced crate with the green paint on it. And then there's a couple of items up here. Okay, so good use of color to, you know, start providing some contrast against the items. Again, like with this type of a booth, there's going to be so many different colors and shapes and sizes, varieties in the items, that it's going to be hard to get display backings that work with everything. Okay, so you basically just have to make like the best choice possible, and so far so good. Over here we just have a couple of circular like wire baskets, and they're holding a couple of taller things. Like here are deer vertebrae bouquets. Pretty cool. And doing a good job of just kind of keeping them in there and standing them up, you know, so that's kind of cool too, because the item itself is providing a little bit of height naturally. A couple of things right here laid down on the table. Probably would like to see these stood up somehow, especially this piece. This piece looks really cool. You know, it's like a skull that's framed, and that's kind of a really neat piece to see at the booth. So I would like to see that stood up in some fashion and then pointed outwards so that it can kind of call some attention and draw some attention over to the booth, because that's a really cool eye-catching piece. Over here, we have a wood backing board, and there are 2 items attached to it. And again, good contrast and good use of the display, leaning this display against another wooden crate, which is creating another tier of height at the booth. And then on top of this wooden crate, we have essentially a split of 2 different displays. Now these items are just set down on it. The first aid kits, the Apocalypse first aid kits, pretty cool. And then over here, we have a spinning display. Okay, so again, good use of the wooden crate by putting the spinning display on top of it so that we're creating some height. All right. And then let's go to this part of the booth right here. So I'll stick to this picture for now. This we'll touch on in the marketing section, okay? But nice job kind of filling the gap and just kind of creating this nice natural flow. And then over here, really cool. We haven't really talked about this on the channel yet. And I mean, on any video, really. I mean, whether it's the booth reviews or the how to become a craft fair vendor videos, we haven't really mentioned this, but some vendors will, it's kind of a sacrifice, right? So you sacrifice a little bit of display and table space in order to have like, it's kind of like a quirky experience and fun experience, and it makes it exciting for the shoppers. But basically, there's a bunch of different ways that you can do this. The object of this is basically to have like a giveaway for spending like a certain amount of money at the booth. That's probably what I would assume is happening here, okay? But sometimes vendors will create like an experience where it's like, you know, they can kind of blindly pick something out of a hat, or they'll have something like this where it's like a gumball machine or some other machine where, you know, they can take their turn and see what they get, you know, out of it. So sometimes vendors will do this where, they have like an experience at the booth, and some vendors like it, some vendors don't, and it's really up to the vendor. But what I will say is that it does make for an exciting element at the booth. It is kind of cool where, okay, I mean, making a purchase at a craft fair is exciting enough because, of course, you're enthusiastic about the booth enough to make a purchase, so you're already excited. But then when you get to have like some kind of like a game or a prize or like a giveaway that's mixed into the experience and added to the experience, that's just like a whole nother layer of making your booth memorable, making an experience. And these kind of things, yes, they do take up some room at the booth, but like I said, if you want like an easy way for people to remember you and be like, oh yeah, that was where we, got to do that thing afterwards or whatever, this is kind of something to think about. So again, there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can do it, and I've seen it done like in a whole bunch of different fashions, like these giveaways or these like little mini games. So yeah, just something to kind of consider at the booth. And the way that this is laid out, very well done. It's on the corner, and it's kind of like it's almost like enticing, because it's put like right on the corner of the booth, and it's like, ooh, what's that? I mean, you can clearly tell that this is like an oddities and, like she said, like dystopian and like interesting looking booth, but then you see this on the corner and you're like, okay, what's going on here? Like, what is this? And like, how do I get one? Like it's a really, really nice magnet to draw people in. All right, let's switch views for a second. So we're going to look at the side of the booth now. So here's the side. And again, it says surprise, handmade bottle cap, pins, magnets, and keychains. All right. So this is set up where she has it for 25 cents. Okay, so it actually is a functional machine. So yeah, like I said, there's a bunch of different ways that you can do this. But regardless of how you do it, it's mostly, the purpose of it is mostly to be an attention getter. And that's what it does. It's, it draws people in, gets their attention, and they see this and it's like, okay, cool. But then they start checking out other stuff. All right. And down here is a picture frame. It says save the date. And this is a good idea to have at the booth as well. So we'll kind of talk about this in signage. But again, this is something that we haven't really touched on the channel before. So I'm going to be pretty excited to talk about this. As we go along, a couple of things laid down on the table. Maybe a little bit of a riser would be nice here for these two to kind of like double up. So something, maybe not necessarily like a wood crate, but more so like a natural step riser would be kind of cool for these, just to add a little bit of height, get them off the table, and let people see them from a little bit more of a distance. Then finally, over here, we got the wicker basket, and that contains loot bags. All right, so kind of like a grab bag type of deal for $15, and that contains all these. All right, so that covers the displays at the booth. I think for the most part, doing a pretty good job. Okay, so we didn't really touch on too many tips or changes or anything like that. And again, I think you're doing a good job of getting contrast where it's possible, and sometimes it's just going to be kind of a challenge, like with these items where there's a lot of different colors in the items, and really no matter what you lay them against, it's going to be tough on a couple of the items, so there's that situation to think about. But then I think what you could do with the displays is, we saw a little bit of it here, like we saw the coffin boxes, and then with the skull item right here, it would be cool to see those propped up a little bit. So it's going to be a little bit tricky, because when you start propping things up that are in the front of the table, well, then now you have to start considering, okay, is it going to be blocking anything behind it? So then you might have to do like a little step riser for the second layer of the table, just to make sure that they're not getting blocked by what is now stood up in front of it. Okay, I think displays, you're doing a pretty solid job here. So again, really not much to improve on, and like I said, doing good. Okay, now let's go ahead and get into pricing. So we're going to zoom in a little bit, because the pricing can be seen a little bit better when we're pulled in. So we'll start to kind of go around, and again, I'll work my way at the top, and she is utilizing individual price tags. Okay, so you can see 30, 30, 30, 30. So the stuff at the top is individually priced, and it all looks for 30. All looks to be 30, okay? And when we go down, then we have a little bit of grouped pricing happening. So then we start to look at the necklaces, and these are 20 a piece. Okay, so that covers all these. And then the birdhouses are 40, so that covers these. The trinket boxes are 20, and that covers all these. These items up here, here, right, you can see a small tag right here. So these are individually priced, okay? And then the vertebrae bouquet are 30 a piece. And I think this is coyote vertebrae bouquet are 15 a piece. All right. And then these two items, they look like they're individually marked because I can see a tag with writing on it right there. And then also when we move over here, these two are individually marked with 40 a piece, and then a little bit of detail written on the tag there. The first aid kits, 20 a piece. All right. And then as we move over to the side, okay, we have the mystery novelty art tin. Those are 30. And then the oddities coffins are 40. And then, as we mentioned before, the loot bags are 15 each. Okay, so there's a little bit of a mix going on of individually priced items and then grouped pricing. And that's not wrong by any means. And, there's no criticism to provide with it. And it's doing a good job. So as long as you're covering all the items, you're fine. So some people go all individual, some people go all grouped pricing, and then it is okay to do a blend of both where possible. Like the necklaces were a really good example. It's not necessary to put price tags on all these individual necklaces when it's the same value, so covering it by the group pricing, that's fine. It's a little bit less clutter, and it's actually a little bit less distraction to look at the items in general when there's not tags to look at as well. So yeah, really good. The pricing is really good. I don't know that I have a whole lot to say on that. I think again, you're doing a really good job with this. This is definitely an area of strength with the booth, and all I would basically say is just keep doing what you're doing. I think you're doing a good job of making it very clear what everything costs, and on the few items that you've put like a little additional detail on it, it's kind of cool. You get like a little bit more emotionally attached to the items when you get a little bit of a backstory, or a little bit more about, especially with an oddity booth, when you know more about the material that the item is made from. Okay, so like what kind of bones are they, and stuff like that. So yeah, I think you've done a really, really nice job with the signage and with the pricing. So very good. Okay, so speaking of signage, we're going to go ahead and jump right into signage. And there's a lot of pricing signage at the booth, but then we also have a few other things to look at. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit further here and we can kind of take a look. So we'll start from the left and go to the right. And on the display itself, you've put art for the creative revolution, okay? And then you actually have like a couple of stickers on here, one of which being your business logos, all right? And then here is like a heart with some stuff around it. This one's a little bit blurred, but anyways, you do have some signage even incorporated into the displays, okay? And writing put on the displays. So this is kind of a cool thing, you guys, because we actually saw this a little bit on the last booth review as well, where that vendor had a mirror and it had, I can't remember it now, but it had like some kind of like it was like something about like no bad vibes or something like that, And then here we see art for the creative revolution. Okay. So it's like you can make your displays multifunctional and essentially make it signage as well. You can put whatever you want on it, and this is a good way to also hammer home and expand upon your theme. So think about your displays and even like what you can do to take the displays themselves to the next level. With the displays, a lot of times what we're talking about on the channel and with the booth reviews is like the texture of them and the color of them, but there's so much more that you can do with them, so it's like the texture and the color is kind of like just the beginning, and you can really take it to the next level if you want, and the sky is kind of the limit. So just get creative with your booth, make it memorable, make it unique, make it you. Push that brand and just really embrace your theme. All right, so let's kind of back out a little bit because we're super zoomed in, and we'll keep going with the signage. So we did talk about the pricing signage, so we've covered a lot of this here, and we're going to zoom out because there's no more to look at. Okay, we're going to go to a different view. And then over on the side here, this is the one I wanted to talk about. Okay. So let's come further in. Here we go. Now this particular sign, it says save the date, July 22nd, animal rescue fundraiser, party with a purpose. This is neat because, again, this is something new to the channel. It's always a good idea. And I don't know actually if Manifesto is part of this event. I would assume so, but if you have like a big event coming up, there's nothing wrong with like putting something out saying, catch me at, and then have like your next show or whatever. Really, it's a good idea for momentum purposes to try to get a following, okay? Because somebody might see like your booth and they might see your booth and be like, dude, my friend would love this, but, maybe they're not with them. So it's like, damn, where are they going to be next, And this is a really nice way to do that. And sometimes shoppers will like take pictures of people's booths, and sometimes it can be a little bit weird, where it's like, is this person just going to copy my stuff, or what are they taking a picture of? But like, this is a cool thing to be like, take a picture, like this is where I'll be next, send it to your friends or whatever, or tag a friend, or, send it to your friend in a message. And this is almost like a positive way to experience people taking pictures of your booth, okay? Because these signs, they do get attention. And I've seen vendors put signs out where it has like their next 3 shows or 2 or 3 shows. So just something to consider at the booth. Again, it's a new thing that we haven't really talked about yet, and it's a really, really great piece of signage that can help you to, again, build up some momentum to hopefully get a following from show to show. All right, so let's kind of keep going here. We'll back out again, and I think that's it for signage. Okay, so we've covered all the signage. I'm trying to think of other signage that you can have at your booth, and we'll get to some in marketing, but yeah, I think you're doing, a pretty good job. The one thing that you don't have that I think I would like to see is, because we talked about pricing, and you were doing a good job on pricing signage, but I would like to see a payment option sign. So how you accept payments. Is it cash? Is it card? Is it Venmo? Is it PayPal? Whatever. So that kind of a sign would be nice to see somewhere at the booth. All right, so now let's go ahead and talk about marketing. So we're going to dive back out a little bit. And the first piece of marketing that we see is the banner. And it really stands out nicely against the black tablecloths, and we have the white runner. And the marketing is just a logo, okay? So a lot of times what I'll recommend vendors to do is 3 elements: a logo, and then sometimes the logo is the business name, so people don't have like an actual graphic or emblem. They just have like a font that acts as their logo. Okay, so one or the other. And then a way for people to contact you. So like one way. Don't overcrowd your runner or your banner with every single social media handle and your website and your email. Put the most preferred way for people to reach out to you on your banner. Okay, so one way. And then this is optional, but some people will also add to their banner what they do at their booth. Okay, so you could put dystopian oddities or oddities for the apocalypse, like something just weird, and that would be kind of cool, like for the booth. But again, that's kind of like an optional thing, okay? Because when people look up and they see your items, they're gonna know what it's about, okay? So I don't really think that's super necessary in this case. I think the one that I'd like to see though on the banner is just the one way for people to reach out to you. And then in the background, this is actually kind of cool because she essentially has like doubled up on her business logo, and it's kind of like a slight variation of it. It's cool. It's like I think this is a metal piece, and it's got like some weathered and worn, aged look to it with a lot of character. And I actually like it against the black. It almost looks like moody, and some people call oddities like the dark arts, and it almost like leans into that and embraces it, so I like that. I like the black background with this in front of it. And then as we continue with the marketing discussion, Now we can get into this sign right here that I've already mentioned about 40 times, 40 times in the video. So let's see. I think this is going to be our best view. All right. We'll kind of dive in, and this is her follow me sign, and it has her QR code, and that is going to take you to her socials and all that stuff. So good way to get people to follow you on those social media apps and stuff like that. So and then she has her handle down here, hey Manifesto. All right. And really nice, just very tasteful, very simple. It gets the job done. I like that you have you put the branding and the logo into this sign, so that's always good to see. You want to kind of hammer that home and just drive that home. I mean, hell, you even got it on the on the hand sanitizer, right? So nothing wrong with it. Just go for it. I mean, put it everywhere. Just make people remember you, and that's what you want to be doing. So very good job. This right here, I believe, and I do have additional photos, but I generally only like to stick to 5 for the reviews. Otherwise, it gets like kind of crazy. But I want to say that these are her business cards. Okay. So this is just a simple tray, and then the business cards are in here. Okay. So again, good job with the marketing, doing very good. This is definitely, again, one of those strong elements of the booth is that there's little bits of marketing kind of tied in everywhere. Okay. So yeah, very good. And when we go to the side of the booth, I don't think there was anything for marketing here. I mean, this sign right here, you can consider this marketing because it's essentially like, marketing yourself for a future show. So when you start to think about signage, this is kind of like one of those dual purpose signs where it's like you're just getting signage at the booth, but then you're also, marketing the business. So yeah, really, really good. All the way around the booth, we've got signs of marketing and stuff like that. So excellent. I mean, the one thing that I would say is that somewhere at the booth, I would like to see a little bit bigger the business name. Okay, so you have a super, super cool, quirky, memorable logo. All right, and then you kind of doubled down on it, and you got it back here. But in one of the 2 locations, I would like to see, hey Manifesto somewhere located in there. Okay, because you want to hammer that name home too, how people can find you and all that. So now we're going to go ahead and dive into vertical space. And again, area of strength at the booth, okay, because mainly of the use of the top of the canopy. I can't stress the importance enough about the use of the top of the canopy, you guys. There's so many different ways that you can do it, okay? Even in the booth reviews, we've already seen a bunch of different ways of people doing it. We've seen hats hung down. We've seen 3D printed items hanging, and now we have the oddities, and it's great. It's really good to see this use of the space. And like I said, even in the way that you're displaying it, think about your theme, okay? And extend that to those displays. Tie everything in. Don't just tie the tables and the items in. Tie the whole experience in. Okay. All right. So yeah, but other forms of vertical space, we did do an in-depth breakdown of the tables. Again, this is very, very strong. Really, really nice job of kind of creating like some ebbs and flows. Okay, so that's kind of cool too. When you guys do vertical space, on the channel, we talk a lot about getting up off the table, okay, which of course is important. But what you don't want to do is get up off the table and do it in a way where it's like all the same height straight across. It's kind of like counterintuitive and counterproductive because now it's not interesting anymore. Now basically you just have another straight line where it's like do all the way across the table, right? Here you have that nice ebb and flow where it's like, okay, here's one height, now we dip down, now we come up, we're introducing this, here's this item down here, then we kind of have a little bit of a gap here, right? So we're kind of coming down again. Then we start to work our way back up to this rotating display. It's a really nice, it's interesting, okay? It's not like exhausting to the eye and repetitive to the eye. And then when we go to the other side, we could see some improvement right here. Okay, so this is probably where I'd want to see some sort of a riser. So at least it would kind of be like boom, like a high, and then like a medium, and then a low, and then you have this really high area covered again with the items hanging. Okay, so yeah, that's probably what I would say here, is that this is the one area where you might be able to get a little bit of improvement snuck into the booth. All right. So I think we should move on to colors, contrast, and texture. Now, this is going to be the big challenge with an oddity booth, okay? Now, we talked about the different kinds of items when it comes to their colors, but we have all sorts of different shapes too. Different shapes, different textures, different sizes, and this is where it gets really difficult, okay? Because it's like, how do you display stuff where it makes the booth look totally cohesive? And with oddity booths, the items have to carry a lot of that weight. Okay, so the items themselves are going to drive the theme. Sometimes you need the displays and your props to carry a little bit more weight, but in this instance, the items are kind of carrying a lot of that weight where they're driving the theme. So when we look at the booth straight on like this, let me zoom out. I think we can zoom out a little bit more. Kind of see it from like the perspective of somebody walking by. So what I will say is that the stuff that's on the table is pretty easy to see. Okay, it's got good contrast, and I really like the table runner that you've chosen, and it's just a really nice classic look. You have the black tablecloth, you have the white runner with the logo just absolutely popping, and then you have the nice burlap runner. I love the combination of black tablecloth and burlap runner. It's just a really pleasing color combination. But then when we look up, this is where the trouble starts to come in, is right here. And I want you to look at these two items. So look at these two items and then look at these, and let me know what you guys like think on this. So this item matches this and this, right? Like it's a similar design, right? Like you have like the soup can, and then like things hanging down from it, right? So we kind of have that repeating like 4 different times. But notice how this one gets completely lost compared to this one. So just take a look at them for a second. The stuff that's hanging down from this one is just gone. It's entirely gone because of the backdrop. And this is a great example in every one of these booth review videos, I've talked about busy backgrounds, okay? Busy backgrounds and busy textures, and how it can harm your items because they just get lost in the background. And as of yet, we haven't really seen an example like in a contrast this clear, especially with having kind of like two of the similar items. So, this pattern back here is for the vibe. It's for the vibe of the booth. It's to drive that vibe and kind of hammer it home, And I know this is kind of a bummer, but what I would recommend doing is you can keep that as the backing to the canopy, okay? Because look at where this booth is located. We said that this was a corner booth, right? So there's people coming from see this lady back here? She could be approaching from back here and see the back of your booth, all right? So she could still see this like quirky, fun pattern and start to get like a little bit of a feeling for that booth. And as she starts to approach closer and closer, kind of like where this dude is right here, if she's getting closer, now she can start to see some of these items. She might be like, okay, this is an oddity booth, it's going to click. What I would recommend doing is keeping this big backing as the backing, but then on the inside of the booth, take this black one and go all the way and just pretty much ditch the visibility of the crazy pattern from the shopper's perspective looking at the front of the booth, okay? Because I know that it's going to remove a little bit of the vibe and the quirkiness from the booth to do this, but it's going to seriously make those items just look 100 times better, okay? And literally you don't have to change anything with the items. All you have to do is just change the backdrop, and the items themselves are just going to look so much better because of what they're propped up in front of, okay? What they're displayed in front of. So that was one of the big things I noticed with the booth as like a big potential improvement, is just up this contrast and improve the contrast, and it's going to do you a world of good. I really think it's going to help you out quite a bit. All right, so then when we look at the other view, let's look at the side view, and we're kind of getting the same effect over here, okay? So again, the things that are on the table, crystal clear. You can see them super, super well. Good clarity, good contrast, all that stuff, good color. But when we look up and we kind of look at the things that are hanging down, like look at this item right here. This item is hanging from here to here, right? And it's like this whole section is like just so hard to focus on. We got the poop emoji right here. This one's a little bit easier to see just because it's not as like involved, But then again, over here we have like multicolored beads. It's hard to see it, it's just hard to see those details. So in this instance, what I would have done, if possible, I don't know if the organizer allows it, because as I look down this entire row of booths, I don't see anybody closing off their sides. But if you could have, I would have loved to have seen this side of the booth closed off. So just wall this off right here. And then that way, these items that are hanging down, they're going to really stand out. They're going to get that clarity that we talked about on the front of the booth. So those are just like some little things that you can do you don't have to change anything with like your setup and your display or anything like that. It's kind of like just the addition of backdrops that are really going to help everything that's in front of those backdrops. Okay. So especially when it comes to an oddity booth, I think this is really, really important, because like we mentioned, these items being so varied in their color, shape, size, texture, all that stuff. So you really need the help of those solid backdrops in order to do all these different types of items justice. Okay, so now let's talk about the strength of the theme. Strength of the theme, definitely a strength at this booth, okay? So doing a really good job of staying in that lane. And I mean, oddities are fun. It's a really fun booth concept because really there's a lot less rules, okay? And not like there's formal rules at any booth to begin with, really. But you know what I'm saying is like you just have so much more freedom with what you can create, what you can put out there, and it's going to make sense. You can really just go wild with it, and when you put it next to all your other items, it's still going to make sense. So strength of the theme with oddity booths is generally always pretty favorable, because as long as you don't have something quote unquote formal, like it would be strange if you had tea light candles, right? Just standard candles or something like at your booth, be like, this kind of feels out of place, right? But as long as everything that is at the booth is just out there and strange and weird, it's going to make sense, So I really dig that with these booths. I think that that's one of the things that makes these booths really interesting, is that you can see 100 of them and they're going to be different. It's not like other booths where, just say, for example, like leatherworking or ceramics booths, if you lined 100 of them up, they're going to start to kind of look similar after a while. But if you line 100 oddity booths up, you just have so much more variety, and just the imagination is just really, really expanded with these booths. So yeah, the strength of the theme is fantastic. Doing a really good job with all corners of the booth, of staying in that theme and just really having fun with it. So yeah, kudos to you, and just keep it up, keep having fun with your creations. All right, so now let's talk about accessibility. And when I mention accessibility, I mean a few different things. People's ease of getting in and out of the booth, being able to look at it, how many people can actually look at the booth at one time, and then things like hazards. Are there any tripping hazards or things hanging in weird places, stuff like that. So let's take it one step at a time here. With the accessibility physically being able to get in and out of the booth, perfectly fine. You know, as I said, this is a 10 by 10 tent, and this is a pretty standard setup for this specific situation. You know, 2 tables pretty much in an L shape, and that gives you a big corner. And I would say that probably about 10 people could be looking at this booth at one time comfortably. So, you know, very good. I could definitely see 5 people on each side looking at stuff. So yeah, you're able to get a lot of people checking out the booth at one time. And then on the inside of the booth, you have plenty of room to do your transactions or go from, you know, one table to another to help people on either side. And it's a nice layout. It buys you a pretty solid amount of space as far as tabletop display space. And then also by utilizing the corners up here on the canopy, that is getting you even more space. So yeah, good job. I like the accessibility. We did touch on propping the items up so that when they face out, you can actually see these items from more of a distance. Okay, so that's going to help you with attracting people from a little bit more of a distance. But the number of items that you have to kind of address with this particular situation of propping them up is very minimal. Okay, so 90% of the booth is displayed as it should be, where it's kind of facing outwards. So yeah, good job there. Just a couple of things to kind of catch over here, and then over here we had the coffin cases. So yeah, not bad at all. And then as far as hazards, you've gone with the stretch tablecloths. Okay, so those are always a great pick because they're contoured. They're not going to be hanging down and folded down to the point where somebody can trip and fall over them. You do have proper tent weights. Okay, so those are always good to have in general. You want to have proper tent weights. Okay, don't wing it on these, you guys. It's not worth, you know, saving 15 or 20 bucks to skimp out on proper tent weights. Okay, you do not want your tent to turn into a kite. Okay, not a good time, especially when you have a lot of items hanging on your tent and then it goes bye-bye. I mean, that's not fun. So yeah, just do the right thing and get the proper tent weights, and then that way too they look good and they're gonna, you know, serve the correct purpose. Also, it's falls in line with a lot of the organizers' rules, okay? Because sometimes organizers won't even let you use tent weights that aren't a proper tent weight, okay? So like a cinder block or something like that. Some organizers literally won't even let you do that, okay? So go ahead and just spring for the proper ones in the first place, and you'll save yourself a lot of headaches. Tripping hazards, there are none. The table runner is not bunched up at the bottom, as you can see, okay? And over on the other side of the booth, let's go over here and back out a little bit. I think we are backed out. Yeah, that's as far as we can go. But okay, here you can see the tent weight. It's as out of the way as it can be. And then over here, nothing over here. Now, these items, I think these are some sort of frames or something. And I don't know if these are actually like items on display that are for sale, or if you just kind of like set these down and you were kind of like still setting up or something. So this obviously gets in the way of the feet, and somebody could hit this when they're walking out of the booth and knock it over. Okay, so this is probably just one thing to address. And again, I'm not sure if you just, you know, weren't quite set up yet and these aren't even out as displays. Okay, one cool thing that she did for me for this review is that I received a picture from the inside of the booth, okay? And when we talk about accessibility, another element to kind of consider is like tidiness, okay? You don't want a whole bunch of stuff laying around like totes or bags or boxes where people can like trip over them. So I'm going to show you a pretty cool view of behind the booth, and this gives you an idea of what she sees on her side, okay? Notice how everything is just out of the way. So she has a huge tote down here, and then she has like her load-in cart, okay? And then also all of her stuff for her transactions. So you can see all of her shopping bags in here, all right? So everything that she needs, bubble wrap, all that stuff for her transactions. Up on the top, when we look at the back of the booth, there's her cash box right here, okay? So that's a really, really smart way to do this, you guys, is if you have a crate, flip it so that, you know, the wooden part is actually facing outwards, and then you can use that interior as like a safe space. All right, so if you need to keep stuff guarded, I think she's got her phone here, right, or her square reader, something like that, the cash box. You want all that stuff like out of sight, but at the same time you need it to be like easily accessible. So it's like, damn, how do I do that? This is a great way to do it, where it's protected, but it's also enabling you to keep it relatively out in the open. Over here, we got the same thing, okay? So here is another crate that's essentially faced outwards, and then the inside of the crate is accessible. So here is her power bank. You can see the cords running to this power bank. So really, really well thought out. This was a great, great move in setting up your booth. Very intentional and well designed. So a lot to learn on this, you guys, and this is done really, really well. So if you're the type of person where you don't want to wear an apron and you want to have a cash box, this is a really, really nice way to do it. So very well done, very well done. Okay, so now let's talk about general use of space. Very good at the booth, okay, above average, and a lot of square footage is being utilized at the booth. A lot of people, there's a really, really big trend lately of the Z formation with booths. And that's the utilization of slightly smaller tables, okay, because these are 8-foot tables, all right? So the 8-foot tables are great because they pretty much provide an uninterrupted platform for most of the interior of the booth, okay? So if that's what you're looking for, 8-footers are the way to go. But if you want a little bit of a quirkier display setup, what people will do is have about a 4 or 6 foot table along the back wall starting at the right corner. All right, so have a table all the way in the back like this, and then have like a 4 or 6 foot table coming out this way right down the middle. All right, and then finally a 4 or 6 foot table here. Okay, so you kind of have like a 1, 2, 3, and that's called the Z formation. And the way that it works from the shopper's perspective is that people will come and they'll come around and they have kind of like this whole area to look at, all right? And that way there's like 3 angles for you to display as a vendor, and then also essentially three different ways that shoppers can approach the booth and see the booth from, all right? And then that would leave you with this little nook right here for you to stand behind as the vendor and have your shopping and checkout area, okay? So aside from the Z formation, which I do really like, okay, this is probably my favorite way to set up an interior of a 10 by 10. If you can't have people walk around on all sides, like for example, shoppers, they can't walk through here, okay? So like this area is kind of like for the vendors, right? But she has people walking on this side. So what you want to do is basically get those tables all the way out there and then have like the entire exterior of your booth be walkable area. So like I said, this booth can comfortably have 10 people looking at it at one time. Now we've done reviews where, people walk into the tent and you might only be able to do about 6 to 7 people, like tops, walking into the booth. Okay. And that's kind of given the benefit of the doubt. You know what I mean? It's going to get a little cramped at 6 to 7 people. So this is a good way to do it where if you have the space to do it like this, where you have people on the outside of the booth, because that's naturally going to enable you to have more people around your booth. Okay. You can fit more people around the booth than you can in it. So whenever possible, try to do it like this. But as far as general use of space with the items themselves and what's contained within the booth, very good. I mean, you really can't get much more in here without it being too much, okay? And there is such a thing as going too overboard and packing in too much. So I think this is pretty much a good balance. This is a good layout, and I think that you've got pretty much as many items out there as you can without it getting too crazy, okay? So general use of space, you're doing very, very well with. All right, and then finally for the eye test. Now, the eye test is basically an assessment of what are you doing as a vendor to get people who are walking by, and you only have about 2 or 3 seconds to make a good impression. What are you doing to get them to stop and check out your booth? Now, I'll say this much. Oddity booths are probably they probably have like an unfair advantage compared to other booths just because it's like it sparks a conversation and it's like, whoa, let me check this out. This is weird. So oddity booths have kind of like a head start when it comes to the eye test. And I think if we just address the background, that's going to help big time because it's just going to make the odd items pop even more. Okay. And that's what you want. You want these things to stand out because these items, they're going to do the talking. Okay. You don't have to do a whole lot. These items are going to do the talking for you. So that's about all I would say is that if you address the backdrop and then if you're able to put the side canopy on, go ahead and do that and really make the focus on the items, okay? Because the items are top notch. I mean, your work is really cool, really fantastic. I really dig it. And it's gonna get people to stop, period, so don't do a whole lot. You don't really have to change a whole lot or all that. This is going to be about little tweaks, little tweaks here and there, and you're already well on your way. So I would just say kind of keep it going and do the things that we've talked about in this video. And I think you're going to be in a really, really good spot. So yeah, this was a really fun booth review to do. It's very different, and it is a big challenge. In the last booth review, I did a review where the booth was like predominantly earrings, but then there was probably about 7 or 8 different types of items mixed in there. And with booths that have a wide variety of items, even if they're kind of like generally in one theme, like this is clearly all oddities, right? But the biggest challenge is always going to be like, how do I showcase like this wide variety of stuff, but make it look like it's coming from one artist in one booth, So just continue to keep that mindset at the forefront. And I think that's going to help you just stay on the right path. And you definitely are on the right path, In this particular case, you guys, just a little bit of a backstory. I got this particular booth review about 6 weeks ago before filming this. I was about 6 weeks behind at that point. And a couple of weeks before I recorded this, she emailed me again and then gave me updated photos. Okay. So I got different photos and there was some improvements already, so it's like, just trust what you're doing, make the little improvements, and try not to get overwhelmed by like a big picture and like a big renovation of your booth all at one time, okay? Because that can be a huge undertaking and it's almost like you get paralyzed by your idea, and ideas can be good, but if they're like completely transforming your booth, it can almost just paralyze you and make you not do it because of the scale of the project, So I think vendors are better off just by looking at things objectively and kind of addressing little things here and there and taking those steps little by little. And by the time you do, 5 or 10 more shows, or you get through the craft season, your booth is going to be transformed. And it wasn't as extreme as being like, okay, I got to redo my entire freaking booth. So, yeah, just wanted to make that note, because it's just doing craft fairs and being a craft fair vendor is a lot of work in general. And you never want to get to the point where you're burning yourself out. Okay. So burnout is very real in craft fairs and for craft fair vendors and makers. So protect yourself against that. Okay. Make your booth improvements and address those little things that you want to do, but never get to the point where you're going to get sick of the hobby that you love and the lifestyle that you love because you've put too much on your plate. Yeah. Hey, Manifesto, excellent booth, really, really cool. Very excited to do this one. So thank you for sending your booth in and for communicating with me along the way. Great communication. To check out Hey Manifesto, here are the social links. Be sure to follow, okay? Excellent work, very cool, very neat stuff on social media. And I also want to give you a shout out as well. And I hope that you guys give her a follow because probably one of the more active people on this channel, and especially when it comes to like helping to provide some additional tips and insight on my videos. Okay, so that's a really big part of this channel is, I do the videos and that's great and everything, and I come up with as many ideas and tips as I can, but the amount of additional tips that come in is always tremendous. And Angela's always been a big part of that, so I very, very much appreciate that. And I hope you guys give her a follow, even if it's just for that, for helping to contribute to these tips in this great community. So yeah, if you are interested in having your booth reviewed, check out my website. I have more information there. And just be aware that, again, like I kind of mentioned, I do tend to fall behind on these because I can only really pound out about once a week. So just be sure that I'm actually accepting reviews at any given time, and that information is going to be on my website. All right. Website also has my Etsy page and my Amazon links for great items that you should have at your booth for craft fairs and all sorts of other goodies. So thank you all so much for watching. This was booth review number 12. And to check out all the other booth reviews in this series, click on this playlist above. And thank you all so much for watching.